Hey guys, it's Bear here, returning to Preparedness, helping you prepare not for your doomsday, but your everyday. So this week on the podcast, we talked about water and water storage, water filtration, and just water in general. And to be honest with you, it's probably the most important item you're going to have for your storage, for your preps. You can go about 3 days without water, and you can go like 3 weeks without food. So as much time as we spend on food and food storage as preppers, in the preparedness world and stuff like that, water is going to be the number one. And it's not necessarily talked about enough, I don't feel. So this week's podcast was strictly on that. And there was actually a poll done by a university out in New York, and they found that 53% of Americans do not have 3 days worth of food and water stored. 53%, over half. And I'd be willing to bet it's probably a lot more than that. But 3 days worth of water that's, for one person, that's 3 gallons. So 3 gallons of water people do not have in their home. Gallon per day is the average, and you may be thinking that's a lot, but this water isn't necessarily just for drinking. You're talking drinking, you're talking hygiene, you're talking, cooking, cleaning, everything. A gallon a day is what the average is. That's what the CDC says. And if somebody's sick, or if it's a warm climate, you're probably going to do a little more than that. And you may be saying to yourself, well, I can skip hygiene for a while. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but think about how much water you use. If you're trying to boil some pasta, think about how much water you use in that pan, and it's going to be a lot more than you think. So that gallon of water is going to go pretty quickly. And that's a gallon of water per person per day, and that includes pets. So if you've got pets, you got to include a gallon of water per day for them also. So that's just kind of a general overview of how much water you're going to need. And if you're relying on going to, say, the lake or stream or pond nearby your house, think about the fact that everybody else is going to be trying to go there too if they start running out of water. And 53% of them are going to be there day one, right? If for some reason something happens to your water supply where it can't, you aren't going to have running water, 53% of people are going to be running around foraging, looking for water. If you plan on using that lake or stream or river that's close to your house, what happens in a flooding situation? Now all that contaminants from that whole neighborhood is running right into that area. If you're in an urban area and you plan on using the lake or river nearby your house, the stream running through, think about the possibility of any contaminants getting in there from flooding, if that's what's causing your water issues. All right, so storing water is very important, and it's something that we should all be doing. And I mean, if you have to, go out and get the milk gallon jugs of water. They got them at Walmart for 88 cents, purified drinking water. Those are fine. The problem is that plastic isn't necessarily the strongest. I wouldn't use milk jugs for storing water, and I wouldn't recommend using that as my sole source of water. You can find some more heavy duty ones. They at Fleet Farm here, where I live, at Fleet Farm, they have the Niagara water gallon jugs, and it comes in a 6-pack for $4 or $5. You can get them on sale all the time. The nice thing about those is they're a little heavier duty plastic, so they're gonna last a lot longer. They're not gonna break down over time, and I'd recommend those at the minimum. You can buy special water containers, that are made for storing water and stuff like that, but they get very expensive. The nice thing about them is they do stack up nicely. You can get the square ones that'll stack up, on top of each other and stuff like that, but man, do those things get pricey, and it's really kind of more than you really need to do. I would recommend getting yourself some 2-liter bottles or some gallon juice jugs. And the nice thing about those is they're a thicker, heavier plastic, and they're made to withstand, the carbonation, the acidity, all that kind of stuff. So as long as you rinse them and clean them out properly, they'll be great for storing water. And we talk about in the podcast how to clean them and rinse them properly. And basically it just takes some bleach and swish it around, and All right, I'll just go through it. So you take a teaspoon of bleach for a quart of water. You pour that inside your gallon jug or your 2-liter bottle. You shake it around, make sure it coats the whole inside, and then you let it sit for 30 seconds. 30 seconds is all you need. Then dump it out, and then just let it air dry. And then you can go ahead and store your water in there. And as long as you rotate your water supply, you'll never have stale, nasty water. And really, water doesn't go bad anyways, but if you are concerned about that for, say, long term, let's say you're doing like big 55-gallon drums of water, you can put 8 drops of bleach per gallon, and that'll help keep it clean, clear, and from going stagnant. And really, one of the things that happens is when water starts to get stale like that, a lot of times it's the loss of oxygen in the water. So as long as you kept it cool, dark, in a cool, dark place, you know, not sunlight where algae is going to grow or anything like that, just take that water and pour it from one container to the next and kind of get that aeration back in there, and then the taste will go away. It'll taste just fine, but there's really nothing wrong with it. But that's just a couple ways you can store water. Now, as far as filtration goes, another thing I want to recommend, and I'll leave it down below in the description, is the water bob, which is a bathtub water container. And basically, it's a big, giant plastic bag that fills up your whole bathtub. And if you know an emergency situation is coming, you know, potential hazard, you can throw that in there, fill that up, and then there's a little hand pump on top of it that pumps the water up. But that's 100 gallons right there at your disposal of clean drinking water. So I recommend that. As far as filtration system goes, you know, you've got the Sawyer Minis, you've got the Life Straws, you got the Hydro Blues. Those are great for what they are. You know, there's some other higher end ones, more expensive. You know, you got your Berkeys. You can build your own Berkey. You can simply go on Berkey's website and you can buy the filters and then use some 5-gallon drums and build your own. So kind of go a little more in depth than that on the podcast. If you'd like to listen to our podcast, go to journeytopreparedness.net. The podcasts are all right there. Or you can find them on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify. However you get your podcasts, we are available. These are just shortened, condensed video versions of the podcast to kind of give an overview of what we're talking about there and give you some ideas and get you thinking. But remember, water is key. And if you're relying on, you know, ponds, lakes, streams, think about 53% of everybody else. 53% of people around you in your neighborhood are not going to have a water supply, so they're going to be headed to the same place. And they see you show up there with some gallon jugs or some water filters, and you know, you may be putting yourself in a situation you don't want to be, to have to defend yourself for that water filter to get clean drinking water should that situation arise. All right? Same thing with a pool. A lot of people are going to rely on, you know, rainwater catchment and pools, you know, if they got a pool in their backyard, and that's great, but that pool is a big, huge, you know, flag to everybody else in your neighborhood that you've got clean water there. And so you may be putting yourself in a situation where you got to defend that water supply, and it might not be the most comfortable for you, you know, to have to defend your water against your neighbors. So if you can store it more discreetly and in gallon jugs, I mean, that's really gonna benefit you. All right, so that's the end of this episode of the video podcast. Until next time, this has been Bear with Journey to Preparedness, helping you prepare not only for your doomsday, but your everyday. Peace.